Today's workforce appears to be going through some demographic changes with multiple generations working together. Sometimes this has the potential to make for some tension and stress in the workplace, which can impact our overall mental health. Joining us now from Orange County, California to chat about it is Dr. Scott DeLong. He's a sociologist and workplace expert. He's also author of the book, I Thought I Was a Leader, A Journey to Building Trust, Leading Teams, and Inspiring Change. Scott, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you very much, Hal. I really appreciate your opportunity to be here.
You bet. Now, in your book, you say the landscape is changing, with Gen Zs about to outnumber baby boomers. So where and why are we seeing tensions and stress happening between the different generations here in the workplace?
Well, because there's a gap of 4 generations now, right? You got baby boomers, and then you have the Gen X, then millennials, and then the Gen Z. And typically, you only have a gap of one, 3 of them instead of 4. But now we have 4, and the larger the gap, the bigger the differences are going to be, just based on our experiences, the things that we have seen versus what they have seen. And you're going to see that there's communication differences. There are different, certainly mental health concern differences. Give you a quick example. Those of us in my generation, and I'm 64 years old, so those of us in my generation, we were taught to buck up, dude, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and if you go see a counselor or a psychologist, that's an area of weakness. And yet we taught our children differently. We taught them to be concerned about their feelings and to recognize their feelings. So while they have a completely different point of view on what mental health looks like, it's us, the older generations, that taught them how to do that. And yet we don't embrace that ourselves. So you're going to see gaps. Absolutely.
You know, it's interesting. You even see that in professional sports nowadays. And when I was a kid, and I played football, it was like, okay, you just dislocated your finger, put it back into place and get out for the next play. Or you had the wind knocked out of you, or maybe there's a cracked rib, tape it up and go back out again. But nowadays it's a lot different. So I think you're right, society has changed quite a bit. Now, Scott, when you see a lot of conflict in the workplace, not on
Yeah.
the field, to what degree can this affect the mental health of employees?
Oh, absolutely. Conflict. So I reframe conflict to just a difference of opinion. It can turn into a war, a fight, a battle, and those things certainly can affect the mental health of people if they get into a place where they feel that they're not their experience is not valued, that they don't have a safe place to go. It is going to affect the mental health of people. If we reframe conflict to looking at just a difference of opinion, and that we want to explore those opinions because there's a lot of reasons to explore difference of opinions. One is going to make me smarter. I'm going to have more information if I'm willing to listen and open up. But 2, it's going to make a connection better between human beings, right? This we talk about respecting others, and respect to me is not just the type of respect that my dad taught me. Respect is earned, it's not given. But respect is more respect for human dignity. And that now more than any other time is so vital, especially when you see these big gaps in the generations. The respect for them, whoever them is, the other group, whether it's the young people looking up to the old people or the old people looking up to the young people, having respect for what it is that who they are, what they know, how they can help, and how they can benefit is a big difference. And if we look at it like that, we have less conflict and we just have a difference of opinion and a way for each to teach each other something new about the world that they didn't recognize before.
It's true. When we learn, we grow. I mean, even though I'm a Gen Xer, I work with some millennials and I work with some Gen Z employees
Yeah.
here too, and I learn from them as well at the same time. They help teach me something new as I help teach them and maybe nurture and mentor them as well. So it's nice how we learn and grow, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I think I'm going to take that back to a chapter in my book on humility, right? And I frame humility a little bit differently than most people do as well. Humility to me is not thinking less of myself or pushing off the praise that people might give me. It's not that at all. Humility for me is to recognize the human dignity in everybody and that I can learn from anybody. And whether they're Gen Zs, there's a lot that these folks can teach me. And it's not just on technology, but the whole mental health piece. Like this whole pull yourself up by the bootstrap, great idea, but darn, things happen in life, right? And I could use some support too, if I'd just be willing to open up about it.
So, Scott, how are the generations different in their attitudes towards workplace mental health? Compare someone like me who's a Gen Xer versus someone like my son who's a millennial.
Yeah, I think, and it gets even deeper when we talk about the folks in the Gen Z. The younger generations are much more in tuned to their needs, and they should be. Um, the older generations, we take a look at it and say, well, just get on with it, move on. Things happen, move on. And while that gets things done faster, it the depth with the concern for for what's inside the person really does matter.
So, why doesn't a one size fits all generations approach really work for supporting workplace mental health?
Well, it one size fits all doesn't work because we have different needs or recognition of the different needs that we have with each other. I don't I'm going to look at it like I don't need the help. I'm just going to get through this. Whereas the younger people actually want some support and want some place to go and talk. But when you get back down to it, we're all human beings and we all have a lot of the same needs. We have the need to feel connection. We have the need to feel that we are valued and that other people consider us worthy. So there is a little bit of a one size fits all approach, but how to get there, right? The one size fits all approach is to make people feel whole. How we go about that is different by the generations.
So, Scott, what should companies do to accommodate these generational needs for supporting mental health in the workplace?
It's all about communication with me. So the first thing that I think we need to do is we need to teach our supervisors, our managers, our directors, and our vice presidents that these issues are important and they're real and that they affect the company's bottom line too. It's not just the humanity piece, but it affects the bottom line as well. So if we teach people that these things are real and that we need to take the time to have open communication with folks and that it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable, that those communication can take place. Communication again is the key. It is the solution to most of the not serious mental health issues. I'm not talking about psychosis and all that, but I'm talking about the feeling that we belong piece and having the different generations open up and talk to each other, be a little vulnerable, be a little humble, show some empathy with each other. We're going to make connections a lot deeper.
So, how can a company really gauge if they're really hitting the mark on this when it comes to communication? Is there a proper way to potentially evaluate?
Yeah, there really is, and it's a matter of opening your eyes and paying attention. So the first thing that you're going to see when we're not addressing the concerns of people is the high turnover rate. We saw that during COVID, and it has gotten a little bit better, but not a lot better. People are out there looking for new opportunities. What I'm suggesting is that with this open communication policy and processes and feeling for humanity, right, for people, that we're going to have much less turnover. So your turnover rate is the key. The other keys that you take a look for in the business environment is, are people missing deadlines? Is the clarity not there on what expected of them? If they're not engaging in meetings, if they're not willing to open up and talk, you're going to start seeing those as subtle clues. But the reality is it's going to hit home when people are taking more time off work or if they're switching jobs.
You know, one of my coworkers said it's also called quiet quitting sometimes, when somebody almost goes into a shell and stops the communicating, just does the basics, doesn't go the extra mile anymore, and you start to see that in your fellow coworkers. Now, I'm guessing that sometimes generations communicate a little differently. Some like to communicate via text. They say, why did you call me? Just text me, don't call me. And I'm like, what? I'm from the old school. I like to either call somebody or talk to them face to face, while even other people prefer online platforms to communicate. So how do we kind of maneuver and work through all of this?
So this is the one area that I think the older generations do a little bit better job with. And so we have something that we've created called the communication hierarchy. And what it suggests is that the greater the chance for conflict, meaning just a difference of opinion, the higher up the communication hierarchy we need to go. At the top of it is face-to-face communication. Below that is what we're doing right now, a video call. So I can see your reactions, and I can gauge with your tone of voice. Below that's a phone call. Below that is email, and below that is text, right? The only thing lower than the text communicate when there's conflict, potential for conflict meaning you're going to see things differently than I do. That's all, right? The more chance for that, the higher up this ladder we need to go in order to effectively communicate. How often have you seen a text message go wrong or an email that someone responds to improperly? So these are some of the things that the older folks are going to need to help the younger people understand the value of this face-to-face communication. Whereas a text is great if someone wants to text, hey, meet you at the movies at 5:30. Great, no conflict there. It's much more efficient to communicate via text and email, but it's not as effective. And I prefer effectiveness over efficiency any day.
A lot less misunderstandings as well. Like you said, if you meet somebody face to face or do a Zoom call or whatever, and yeah, a lot less miscommunication there, right?
Absolutely. And I tell people all the time, you start getting these emails going back and forth and they start escalating, right? The tension starts escalating. And as soon as you see this difference of opinion, pick up the phone, walk down the hall. Like, let's get some emotion, let's get some voice into this conversation as opposed to the written language. The written language is almost always read one level below my intention, like one level more hostile than my intention. And it just works out that way. So if I'm going to suggest somebody do something differently, I'm not going to do it via email. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to walk down to their office. I'm going to give them a call and talk about it so that they can see my intention, and then the impact is equal to the intention. Intention and impact are so often different, especially when we're texting or sending emails.
You know, it's funny, a couple of times my mother, when she was still alive, may she rest in peace, she would text me, and a couple of times she had her caps lock on and everything was uppercase. And that
Yeah,
usually says you're yelling at somebody, you're angry, right?
yeah,
And I let her know
yeah.
after. I said, are you okay, Mom? Are you angry? No, I'm not angry. Why do you keep asking me that,
See, again, generational divides, right? So you know that that uppercase means yelling, and she just thinks it means emphasis. That's all.
So, what can we, as the more mature, older generation, learn from our younger colleagues, especially when it comes to communication?
Well, there's so much to learn from them. So if it's true, and it is, that between Gen Z and millennials, more than 50% of our current workforce, that also extrapolates to say that they're probably more than 50% of our current customer base. Our future is in these folks. Do you want me, a baby boomer, making decisions on our future when these folks know what's happening, know what they're going to be needing, right? So, what can we learn from them? We can learn what's happening now and in our future. What can they learn from us? Some old tried and true ways. We have experience, we have some wisdom, and sharing that with each other is the key to making this process work. And the sharing it is that communication piece, right? That helps bridge that mental health gap that we're talking about as well. If I just look at them and say, oh, they're just young people and they don't matter and whatever, how are they going to receive that? Or the other way around. He's just an old guy. What does he know? Right. As opposed to sharing our information together so that we can both learn and grow. But more than that, we can connect on a human level.
And never start a sentence with, back in my day, that'll put up the walls and close off the communication right away, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to talk about is how to get across ideas, new ideas, or ideas that I'd like to have done. And that is, I consider them. So we discuss what the problem is. All right, here's a problem. What I come up with, or they come up with, is a potential solution, and then I'll always end with this. What do you think? That is a dialogue starter, right? It's not, we need to do this and we need to do it now. Never do that, right? So what I'll do is come up with a potential solution, say, what I think we ought to do is such and such. What do you think? Get that dialogue going. And you will see that the people will respond to that. They are going to be they welcome the opportunity that I care about what they have to think. And there's age differences and power differences and all of that. But when I reach out to you and say, hey, Hal, what do you think? What does that do? It draws you closer.
It shows you really value them as a person, right?
Absolutely.
So, what suggestions, Scott, do you have for people looking for ways to get support for their mental health at work?
It requires a few, and back to those three principles I was talking about: humility, vulnerability, and empathy. Being willing to. In order for that to happen, though, that there has to be psychological safety created within the organization. The psychological safety just means this: that people do not fear of any repercussion for anything that they might say, right? And so it's a top-down driven initiative that leadership has to impose. We are going to create a safe environment for people to be able to communicate. Now, here's the problem with that, though. Anybody in the room can ruin psychological safety. Even if the leader is promoting it and saying, here's what we do and here's how we operate, and this is our culture. One person over in the corner rolling their eyes at me as I'm exposing myself will get me to shut down immediately. So it's got to be driven through the entire organization that it's okay. It's okay. This is safe. You can talk to me about this.
Dr. Scott DeLong is author of the book, I Thought I Was a Leader, and it's available at scottdelong.net. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today from Orange County, California.
Thank you, Hal. I really appreciate being here. Thanks for the opportunity.